Hey everyone, welcome back to my kitchen. The next stop on our beginner-friendly Thanksgiving series is going to be macaroni and cheese. I am going to tell you right now, I am not claiming that this is the best baked mac and cheese you'll ever have. I do think it is very beginner-friendly and it's just a simple mac and cheese recipe. It's the recipe I used for my brother's wedding a few weeks ago and it turned out great. I will say disregard the half and half that I'm about to show you. I did have some issues with the half and half and ended up using whole milk, but I ended up using 6 8-ounce blocks of cheese. I did Colby Jack, white cheddar, and mild cheddar. I used some cream cheese. I used half a block. I used some chicken bouillon seasoning for the pasta. Again, disregard the half and half. I will show you in a little bit what happened with it. I ended up using whole milk. So whole milk, some flour, some butter, and I have, how many ounces is this? Let me see. 24 ounces of medium shell pasta. Feel free to use whatever pasta that you like. And let's go ahead and get started. So for starters, I'm going to just cook the pasta according to the directions on the back. I'm going to cook them to al dente, nothing past that. I don't want them to be mushy while they're cooking in the oven as well. And I'm going to add in a tablespoon of chicken bouillon seasoning. I do that to all my pasta water. I just love the way that it adds an extra layer of flavor instead of using salt. While the pasta is cooking, I'm going to go ahead and cut up only 4 blocks of the cheese. The other 2 blocks, I did place them back in the fridge so they didn't like melt because it makes it harder to shred in my opinion. So I'm just going to chop up 4 of the blocks. You can shred all the cheese if that's how you want to do it. It takes so much energy to shred all this cheese, and I learned the last time I made it that I can just cube it up and it turns out just fine. If you have a food processor, that also works very well. It takes no effort at all. I also used to have like the little crank shredder. I got it for Christmas one year. I absolutely loved it, but somehow it warped and I need to get another one. But I did shred 2 of the blocks and that's going to go on top of the macaroni and cheese. I will say if you love your mac and cheese with extra cheese on top, go ahead and add another 8-ounce block, but that's totally up to you. As you can see, I'm just adding in my pasta once the water started boiling. And again, I'm only cooking that to al dente, just giving that a good stir. Make sure you stir your noodles periodically. In this clip here, I'm trying to show you what happened when I was making my roux with half and half. I know it's kind of hard to see, but there are lumps in this roux. When you're making your roux, there should be no questions about lumps. You shouldn't be able to see any lumps. I know it's kind of hard to see, but there's lumps sticking to the side of the pan as well as to my whisk. So I did just completely start over and I used milk. I'm not really sure why the half and half was giving me issues. I've done it before, but I just went ahead and played it safe and used milk instead of half and half. And I am using whole milk. I personally get the best results with whole milk, so that's what I used. So I have my burner set between a little bit after low and not quite medium, and I had 4 tablespoons of butter melted and I added in 4 tablespoons of flour. You don't have to add it in slow or anything. You can just add the 4 tablespoons of flour in once the butter is melted, and then you just want to whisk that butter and flour around and cook that flour out, and then you want to slowly start adding in your milk. You want a nice smooth texture. At first it's going to freak you out a little bit. Just make sure your pan is not too hot and do not stop stirring. If you do not already have a rubber whisk, I will suggest you go to the Dollar Tree and pick one up. It will make this a lot easier because as you can see, you're going to be whisking a lot. So I am just slowly adding in that milk, a few splashes at a time. At this point, I think I added in about 2 cups of milk before I added in the cream cheese. I usually don't measure, but I wanted to kind of measure for you guys so you could kind of get an idea. But as you can see, I'm already like getting the consistency that I want. I don't know if you can tell the difference between this batch and the previous batch. If you're thinking there's lumps, if it's not right, if you don't think it's right, don't be scared. Start over. Making a roux is something that takes a lot of practice, and you're probably not going to get it the first few times. I know I definitely didn't, but just practice. So I added in my half a block of cream cheese, and I just cut that up into a few little pieces, and I went in with my seasonings of choice. I did some seasoned salt, some garlic pepper, garlic powder, a little bit of Slap Your Mama, and a little bit of Creole seasoning that I found at Walmart. My best advice for the seasonings part, because I don't usually measure seasonings, is to start off with half a teaspoon of your favorite seasonings and just taste it. Taste it, add the cheese in, taste it some more. Don't be scared to taste your food. That's the only way you'll know if it's right. So I added in all the cheese that I cubed up, and then I added in about another cup of milk. I did end up adding some more milk, and I will say it's going to depend what kind of cheese you're using, where you got your cheese from. I know that sounds crazy, but it does make a huge difference. Not all cheese melts the same. I wish I would have stopped at the third cup of milk, but I ended up adding in more milk, and then it just ruined my consistency. I had to add a little more cheese to thicken it back up, but this consistency right here that you see right now is very close to the consistency that you want. You want it to be able to coat a spoon, kind of like a good Alfredo sauce. You don't want it too thin, you don't want it too thick, like where you're just chewing cheese. At this point right here, it starts to get a little too watery for me, and you'll see in a minute I start adding more cheese to it to try to thicken it back up. If your cheese mixture gets to this point, don't freak out. Do not worry, it's still going to cook out just fine, but as you can see at that point, it's just a little too watery. And the way that I fixed this was I took some of the cheese that I shredded that was supposed to go on top of the mac and cheese. I added it in there. I also had a little cheese in my fridge. I added that in there as well, about another handful. And I just turned my heat off and I let this thicken up a little bit more. At the end, it turned out fine. As you can see, it's already starting to thicken back up at this point. Don't worry. Again, mac and cheese is something that always gives me trouble. I just don't know why. I can never get it perfect unless I'm making it for 25 people apparently at my brother's wedding. But don't worry, it'll cook out just fine and it'll still taste amazing. So I added my cooked pasta that I had already drained once it was done cooking into the cheese mixture, tasted it one more time to see if it needed seasoning, and it was good. And I added this to a greased baking dish. I would suggest one of those large foil pans to fit all of this in, but it's just me and I'm gonna freeze most of this. I'm not feeding anyone or taking this to a party or anything. So I just put it in 2 separate pans, and this second batch I did end up adding in a little bit of ranch seasoning. Y'all know how I am. And I added in some cayenne pepper just to give it a little bit of kick. And then I just covered that one with cheese as well. I would suggest more cheese than what I put. I just grabbed a little bit from the fridge just to make up for that cheese I had to put back into the cheese mixture. But I just threw this in my oven at 375, uncovered, until it was nice and golden brown. Depending on your oven, it might take 25-35 minutes. Just watch it. And it turned out great. Although it wasn't perfect and I had a few hiccups in the road, it still tasted amazing. My mom already tasted it. I sent her home with some and she thought it was great. I'm sure she'll be in the comments telling you guys how she loved it. But overall, I give it a 10 out of 10. You can't go wrong with a simple mac and cheese recipe. I hope you guys try it out. Let me know what you think. I can't wait to show you what I have next for the Thanksgiving series, and I'll be back in the kitchen soon. Love y'all. Bye.